Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Stillwell, and welcome to the APT and Cybersecurity Group LinkedIn Live event. Our topic today is knowing your adversaries, building an adversary model. I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Mavro. Alex, so thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
I'm thrilled to be joined by Lisa Ackerman. She is the CISO, the Council Security Lead at Cybermindz. As a former Air Force veteran with a distinguished career in cybersecurity, including roles as Deputy CISO at JSK and Global Head of Cyber Threat Intelligence at State Street, Lisa brings unparalleled expertise in her current position. At Cybermindz, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting the mental health and resilience of cybersecurity professionals, she leads strategic initiatives for the CISO Council. This involves guiding efforts to uplift personal, team, and organizations' resilience in high-stake environments like healthcare, education, and critical infrastructure and national security through programs that prevent burnout, foster community, support, and drive research into behavioral and psychological aspects of cyber defense. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank you, Alex, and for Aaron for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. We typically have our names listed, but I'm sorry for some reason it didn't pop up today. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. So our first question, of course, we'd like to start off with a little bit of background kind of in your journey. Is can you kind of walk us through your career journey in cybersecurity and what drew you into specializing in threat modeling and adversary emulation?
Sure. So I actually got my start in the Air Force, as you mentioned. I'm an Air Force veteran. I worked in signals intelligence, and I've carried that intelligence with me throughout my career. My first start into actual cybersecurity was in the late 90s, back when cyber wasn't even called cyber. It was like information assurance. And I did that at Edwards Air Force Base, where I was stationed at. And I worked in the intelligence directorate there, where I was the information systems security manager for the entire base. And so I was responsible for all of their security of their classified communication systems in their facilities. And this was at the time when I Love You, Melissa, all of those were out. If you think about way back then, and wormable viruses were the thing then. I was doing phishing exercises when, again, that wasn't even a term. We were social engineering people to steal their passwords and made a few people angry with me for that. But, it was really important for the health of the organization and the facilities to stay secure, especially supporting Air Force flight test operations, making sure that, the aircraft that were flying were safe. So we were really responsible for all the communications around that. If you know anything about Edwards, it's the Air Force Flight Test Center, and all aircraft in the Air Force are tested there. And even other services bring their aircraft there to test. And then Space Shuttle even landed at Edwards Air Force Base. So, so a lot of emphasis on security in that space.
Plus a lot of duties, to be honest.
What's that?
A lot of duties. To be honest.
Very much so, yes. So that's kind of, where I got my start in cyber and really understood the value of protecting information. It was so super important that we not only protected the information, but the people that were processing that information and educating them on the safety. And it's so funny because in 2000, I did a phishing exercise. And I was reminded of this last year. I went home to visit my mom, and she gave me a newspaper article where I had run a phishing exercise on the base, and the headline on the top from the paper was phishing attack. And I looked at that, and this was just last year. And I saw that, and 20 years ago is the same thing that we're still fighting today. AI is going to make it a lot harder, but it proves to me why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So after my time at Edwards, I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, where I helped support the Defense Intelligence Agency build some cross-domain management offices. And there is about making sure that we have the right systems fielded for our troops, again, for communicating and sharing information in the field. So cross-domain solution is a controlled interface that controls information going up to classified systems to make sure no malware gets up there, and then coming back down, making sure that the information doesn't exceed the classification of the system. So I help support that for the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Director of National Intelligence. And then from there, I went to a small company who actually had a cross-domain solution and helped them with business development. And again, was an information system security manager. So not traditional cyber, but making sure that we had secure information and systems to process information. And then from there, I was recruited by the CISO at State Street, who I worked for at DIA. He asked me to come and partner with him to build yet another organization, and that was the Financial Systemic Analysis and Resilience Center.
Okay.
We partnered with 7 other banks when we were declared critical infrastructure by Department of Homeland Security. And so we got together and formed the ARC so that we could partner with the government to help them understand the financial system, so that that would help inform intelligence collection. If any of the banks are being targeted, we would be able to partner with the government, and get that information to protect the system. So it was very important to be able to have that education for the government, so they really understood what components made up the financial system, because it's not just going to the ATM and swiping your card and getting your money out. There's a lot behind the scenes, so really important to be able to show that. And then after getting that organization stood up, I became the security operations director of State Street and managed all of their security operations until about 2020. And then I became the global head of cyber threat intelligence, where I built a world-class cyber threat intelligence team. And we focused on operational, tactical, and strategic intelligence at a time when it was very critical to the financial sector. And then after that, I went to GSK, where I was the deputy CISO and vice president of cybersecurity strategy and solutions. And there I was responsible for yet another organization where I was helping bring in a threat-led defense and making sure that we have the right solutions to defend and protect the organization. And like you said, now I'm at Cybermindz, volunteering my time there for their CISO Advisory Council, where I'm working with CISOs to understand burnout in cybersecurity. So that we can do some studies and help CISOs and their teams to mitigate cyber burnout across their teams. And I'm also on a board for TLP White, where I am helping them with their mission of serving underprivileged communities and children and educating them on cybersecurity.
That's fantastic.
A lot to do.
That is a lot. That is one of the best breakdowns I heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you very much.
My son's in the Navy right now, and he just finished C school, and he's in part of the intelligence stuff too. So we're very excited, and he should be coming home in December. So we're very excited about that too, as you can imagine a mother is.
I love hearing that kids are still going in the military. I personally think all kids should go in at least 2 years. Teaches them so much about life. So I'm really glad to hear that. Yes,
it's been a game changer for him, and honestly, we're very thankful. So thank you. So as a mentor in the Executive Women Forum, how do you see the role of community and education in building stronger defenses against adversaries?
Well, I think education is our number one tool. I think the more people know, the more they're able to help us defend our organizations. It's really important that everyone understand that cyber is everyone's responsibility, not just the cyber teams. And the more that we can do to educate our employees and even our families about cybersecurity and what to look for and how to report it. And because if something's really going wrong with the system, I'm not probably going to know it first. Whoever is the user of that system is probably going to recognize something's off and report it. And sometimes people don't report it because they're scared they did something wrong. The wrong thing is not reporting it. So it's really, really important. I'm glad to see all different kinds of programs bringing cybersecurity in, from the Girl Scouts of America having it as a badge to universities having it as core curriculum, and even in the schools now they have it as part of what they do, what they teach. So I'm really glad to see cybersecurity kind of spreading its wings a little bit.
That's fantastic.
It's only taken 25 years.
Yeah. Alex, I know you had some questions. I'll let you go.
Yeah, sure. I have a few questions as well. For our audience, who may be the new topic? What exactly is an adversary model, and why is it essential for organization to build one rather than relying solely on generic threat intelligence?
So it's a very good question. So adversarial modeling is something I think is really important to defense of a network. So I build what I call a threat-led defense. And I believe that knowing your adversary is very important. A lot across a lot of circles, some people don't think attribution is very important. The more knowledge that we have about our attackers, the better we are able to defend. So I started with this idea of understanding who the adversaries are that are more likely to target my organization. If you look at organizations like CrowdStrike, they have 257 named threat actors.
Yeah,
I really can't defend against 257 named threat actors, let alone all the other ones that aren't named. But if I can focus on those that I deem that are the biggest threat to me based on actual intelligence, then I can prioritize how I build my defenses to defend against those threat actors. So for example, of that 257 or 267 groups that they have, if 30% of those really I have intelligence that would come after my sector or my part of my sector, then I can really focus on those threat actors. And then once I have that list, I can then marry that up to the tactics and techniques and procedures of those threat actors, create a heat map using attack framework. And then I take that and compare that to my defenses that I have in place. Do I have the right tools? Do I have the right controls? Can I use that to inform my threat hunting or how my SOC responds to different alerts from a prioritization perspective? So it really helps build that threat-led defense, and you're leading with intelligence, and you're prioritizing your defense.
I know a bit about threat intel over there, so I can tell you, because in the company where I'm working as well, we have a tool as well. I will not name it, which you can see or monitor a person if he's targeted, for example, like a VP, a vice president of that company, or SVP. You can also see if a branch is targeted as well, or multiple branches from that state or that city. It's targeted, and so on. So I know a bit about this, how it's working and what it's doing, those kind of tools, let's say.
Yep.
But even on threat hunting is different over there. You have different tools over there.
Yeah, and I think for threat hunting, I mean, you can hunt for all kinds of things, but if you really know who is going to be more apt to attack you, if you can look for evidence of those actors being in your network, then you're really prioritizing how you're going and looking for those threat actors. And if you do find that you have gaps in being able to either detect or mitigate those kind of TTPs, then you can go back in and harden your defenses so that you can detect against those. So my hunt teams would go and implement a threat hunt, and they would figure out, I don't have any way to look for that particular TTP. Then I can go back to my architecture and engineering team and say, hey, we need X. And then they would go implement that, and then they could go back and re-implement that hunt to make sure we close that gap. So it's really a circular process there. But intelligence truly provides decision advantage, and that's what we're trying to do here is utilize that.
For me, it's a preventive thing. This is what and how I see that part, which is good. It's not bad at all, because it can be prevented by a team. Look, you're targeted. We have to do something over there. We have to put, let's say, more mechanism or more mitigation in case if there is something obsolete over there in your infrastructure, and so on. So you can do it many things. But others are saying that, threat intel is not so advanced, at least now. Maybe it is, maybe not. I can't say too much. I know that AI is helping a lot with that. I know it's collecting a lot of info from different sources or different the dark web websites, like forums, for example. I have seen very often, and of course we had in the past an event, a live webinar with a person, with Reza. You know what I'm talking about.
The dark web research.
And then that was awesome about what he presented in terms of dark web and threat intel and so on.
Yeah, I think the more that we can get to predictive intelligence, the better off that we're going to be. I mean, that's a dream state, right? We need to get as far left of the boom, so to speak, as we can. And so getting to being more proactive than reactive is really the ideal state. But it's going to take a lot of collaboration across the security teams in order to be able to do that. Make sure you have the right tools in place in order to collect that information, and having good intelligence feeds to support getting that information into us. so that our analysts can analyze that data and make sure that we're taking action for the right alerts.
Yeah, right now, even with AI, if you have, for example, bots that are collecting the info, it's more easier to have the info. I mean, in the less than a second, for example, because please.
Yeah, AI is going to be a game changer for us, right? Once we get it right, I think it's initially it's going to be kind of an interrupter for us, and we got to make sure that we trust the data that we're seeing. I mean, that's a big part of intelligence, right? Is making sure that we trust the data that we're getting. And so training those LLMs to make sure that we can trust the output of them is going to be so critically important. But once we get it right, it's going to be able to take some burden off of our analysts, so that they're just reacting to those things that are actually real, so actionable intelligence, versus searching through that entire pile of hay to find that needle, and slowing them down. So we want the AI to come in and make sure that it's enabling our operations and our operators to have more efficient data and actions they can take, and be more focused.
And that's something else Debbie talked about. I remember was, people are worried, obviously, about AI taking their jobs. She mentioned that Delta Airlines, she goes, she just sees AIs as augmenting, helping her existing, engineers, not taking their jobs, but just making what they do better. Right.
Exactly.
And it was great to hear that, especially from a large corporation like that they see it as not something that's going to harm people, and people are freaking out about it. Obviously, it's all on LinkedIn, but it was good to see that from her.
Yeah, I'm a believer that AI is going to be more of a disruptor whenever you don't know the AI. So I think, we use this as an opportunity to ensure that we're all learning it, because we're the ones who are going to be enabling it and using it to make our jobs easier for us. If we don't, that's where we're going to get left behind. So I think that's where the real fear lies, is those people who aren't learning AI. And I'll just, foot stomp right now. Don't wait on your organization to tell you what you need to learn. Take your own initiative and go learn it.
Correct.
Because it's going to be incumbent upon you to make sure that you're learning these skills.
Yes, and there's something called Kaggle, everyone.
Oh, yes.
Sign up for Kaggle
and use it, and it's great.
Great tool. I said, tell everyone, use it. I think we talked to other people about it. It's unbelievable, and it's all free too. So. Yes.
So there's a question I want to answer around IOCs and building detection. So I definitely think that adversarial modeling can help you build your detection rules in your SIM technology. So if you can use that to prioritize the different kinds of alerts that you're creating, that's actually one way that we found really good use of the adversarial model, was prioritizing what kind of alerts that we built. So if you look at your different log sources that you have coming in and why you're monitoring those logs, what is it about those logs that would cause you concern if something were to happen? And then you can use that information to hone in on those different detections that you need to build, and really specialize them, making sure that you are hitting on those different TTPs from those actors that would target that particular system. I think a lot of time we put cut and dry things. We throw everything into the SIM and then we hope for the best. But this really will help you prioritize, creating that content for alerts on those particular systems that those actors are likely to target.
Yep. Alex, you want to go? Do you have more?
Yeah, I thought you have something to say, but okay, I'll continue with my question. So, in your work, how do you go about constructing an adversary model? Could you outline the key steps, such as identifying threat actors, mapping their tactics, techniques, and procedures, and incorporating behavioral indicators?
Right. So, using intelligence and understanding who's attacking the actual sector is really important. If you think about being in a financial sector or the healthcare sector, the sectors are really large, and within the sector there's subsectors. So if you can start at the outer ring and then come in towards your organization and what you serve within that sector. And then the next thing would be to come from the inside out, looking at your logs and making sure you understand what kind of activity that you're seeing. That will help you form your list of adversaries who you think are more likely to attack your sector. So if you're in the healthcare sector, for example, Fin7 might not be an actor that would attack you unless you're in payments or something like that, right? Like if I'm a doctor's office, I don't know that Fin7 necessarily, not to call anybody out, but that's an easy one. So I don't necessarily care about Fin7, but by maybe looking at one of the other threat actors, I might also protect against Fin7. So I'm actually looking at all the different tactics and techniques for those different actors that I've come up with. And then I'll create that heat map using MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then I'll take that and marry that up to my all of my security tools that I have. And then I'll start being able to figure out where do I have overlaps or where do I have gaps and where do I need to focus bringing in new solutions or removing duplicate solutions because I don't really need them.
So you'll do like an assessment.
Yes. So I do an assessment across your network. And then also, looking at our controls, do we have the right controls in place to cover for those different things? Are we looking for the right things? And then making sure that we have, a really good assessment of the different threat actors, their tactics, techniques, and then my defenses, and then making sure that, that's all aligned. And then that will kind of help you drive what you look at from the different aspects of across cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, that's a good question, Alex. That kind of goes in the next one we were talking about is how does adversary modeling differ from traditional threat modeling?
So
I guess there are specific frameworks. Did you have like MITRE ATT&CK? And how did this basically recommended to getting started from that?
So for me, and it's just how I think about it, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think about threat modeling and I think about software and what kind of vulnerabilities are in software or system, and how do I make sure that that is hardened against a threat actor. Where adversarial modeling is more about my organization and my whole network and who is more apt to target it, and then what TTPs do I need to detect holistically around the whole thing versus just a particular application or piece of software. It's kind of how I think about it in my head anyway.
And I see that Ashkay, he says with MITRE attacks becoming a default reference, how do you prevent adversary models from devolving into checklists of TTPs rather than true insights into adversary behavior and intent?
So adversarial model is not a one and done. Like this is something that has to be kept up to date on a regular basis. So whether it's, once a quarter or twice a year or 4 times a year, whatever it is for your organization, you need to look at it on a regular basis and make sure you are continually assessing your organization to make sure that nothing has changed. So say you have an M&A. That might completely change your threat assessment. And so you might need to look at new actors because maybe they were attacking or targeting that organization prior, and you want to add something or remove something from your threat model or your adversary model. And so this is something that's constantly evolving. So as attack changes, your model is going to change.
Gotcha.
Because it's not a one and done. It's something that consistently has to be up to date.
Aaron?
Okay, perfect. So you have a recent LinkedIn post that highlights opportunities in adversarial modeling to protect networks. That's like, say, serving. Did you talk about, I guess, the serving the patients? Can you share how adversary models are applied in healthcare cybersecurity, especially with the rise of you're seeing ransomware and nation-state threat actors?
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult because how much the landscape is changing, right? Like if you think about the different threat actors are out there, they're constantly changing their model and the way they operate and the way they work. So that's making you have to change the way that you're responding to it, right?
Yep.
There's no way that we're going to be able to defend against 100% of everything, but if we can get the majority of the threats that are against us, if we can protect against those, I think we're winning. But really, how do you take the organization that you're working in? So if you're in healthcare and you're a patient provider, what are the kind of different threats that you might face? Maybe you need a threat assessment to understand that. Mm-hmm. And then you take that and marry that up to what you can, build here for the adversarial model. And that'll really help you understand where you need to harden your defenses. But it's really about the network holistically, the tools that you have, the people, process, and technologies in order to defend the network. So it's really marrying that up to each one of those to help you understand where you have your gaps and where you may have overlaps.
That's fantastic. So Can you provide some like real world examples from any recent projects where building an adversary model helped uncover vulnerabilities in say in kind of a larger scale environment?
So I think really what it's uncovered is, in my experience anyway, is where I have gaps in technology, and being able to detect those vulnerabilities. And so, like you might have tools for identity, but you don't have the right tools in order to be able to detect a certain CVE that's been exploited. And by looking at your tools and comparing that to those threat actors, you're going to be able to recognize if you have holes in your defenses, so that you can go in and bring in new solutions or enhance current solutions that you have in order to harden your network. I think that to me is one of the best places where the adversarial model shines.
Yes.
And it really helps bring in the right intelligence to the right people at the right time. And that's so important to having that decision advantage that intelligence provides.
That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit, go back to AI again. In the context of evolving threats, how are you incorporating emerging technologies like AI, machine learning into adversary models? For instance, we talk about modeling AI-driven attacks or using AI to simulate adversaries.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the different kinds of attacks that threat actors are starting to deploy. If you think about the use of AI, we're trying to use it for the good or to defend our network. Well, these threat actors are using that same technology to turn it around on us. So our systems that we have today have to be able to defend against those attacks tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that is using AI to fight AI. So if we're going to continue to use our old technology that has not been built for these kind of threats, then we're already behind the game, right? And so we need to make sure that we understand what threat actors are doing to use AI to enable their capabilities, so that we can then use the tooling that we have or bring in new tooling so that we can detect those different kinds of AI attacks. I think that's really where the change is going to be. And I think it's really going to matter when we have that first real AI attack. I mean, they're using AI to enhance phishing. Like anymore, you can't even hardly tell a phishing email is a phishing email, right?
Oh yeah.
Trained people for decades. Look for misspellings and punctuation errors and grammar errors, and look at the from line and all of this. We've taught them so many things that our muscle memory for our people is built on all those things that AI is now coming in and making perfect, and our users aren't going to be able to really detect phishing anymore. So how is it that our tools are going to be able to detect it what a human can't? And I think that's where we really need to make a lot of changes. And that's phishing, whether it's via email, phishing via voice, smishing via SMS, or you name the attack, right? It's just going to keep getting better and better with AI, and our systems have to be able to detect against those different kind of threats.
So me and Alex were talking before about how Kali is releasing, I guess, AI capabilities.
Yeah.
Kali, so traditionally Kali in the past was probably not the easiest to use, and you had to have obviously pretty good background in Linux, some other stuff. But now, they want to make it to where anybody could use it and use it as an attack tool.
Yes.
And I could see that as being more of an issue, where in the past it was complex to be able to create code and zero-day attacks. And this is going to get faster and faster with these AI capabilities.
Absolutely. And the threat actors are getting younger and younger.
Yes.
Look at some of the latest threat actors of
Yes.
the really big attacks. They're teenagers. These
Correct.
are kids that are sitting at home or in their basements, and they're gamers, and they're
Yes.
using that technology that they've been raised with.
Yes, exactly.
And they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. And maybe it's opportunistic at first, but then they figure out there's actual real money behind this, right? And then how do we convert them to do this for the good and become ethical hackers versus, bad guys, threat actors, or girls, and make sure that we get them turned around. But I mean, that's part of the problem too. It's not just the technology. We're not even able to profile the way that we used to profile. And when it came out that Lapsus was a bunch of teenagers, everybody was like, what? Why did they do that? It was a surprise. And it's just, we're not creative enough to think about who these threat actors are, but they don't wear hoodies, and they don't sit in their mom's basements, and they don't look like that all the time. They look like me. They look like you. They're old, they're young, they're all in between, right? And we have to make sure that we understand that plus the technology. And if you've been raised with the code and having tools like Kaggle, like we talked about at first, or other tools, it's very easy to use that for the bad and not just
Of course.
If I'm looking to what was in the 90s and compared to today, it looks like in the 90s, but more modernized because of the tools.
I kind of want to go back to the 90s.
I did love the music. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, the 90s music was the best, yeah.
Even 80s, it was the great. But I'm comparing how it was in the 90s with the PayPal and all the things, what was happening. If you remember at that time,
I remember it vividly.
What kind of issues they had. It wasn't with the smishing and all these kind of things or phishing campaigns, but it was different with scams, for example, and frauds.
I think it's easier to get access now, whereas before they had to figure out how to get the access, right? We had now we have a lot of systems that have holes in them, and everybody's trying to get their systems deployed so quickly that they don't plug up the holes. The difference back then was security was bolted on, and in here we have to fight to get security in still, but it's more common to start building secure by design. So if we can get more people to build secure by design, I think that would be helpful. But back then is really about bolting security on later. And it was the creativeness, and I don't think anything surprised us back in the 90s. Not really. Today it's kind of different because they're using all the different technology, and you don't know what direction it's going to come from, and you don't know what system's going to be vulnerable. The difference back then too was, I think, you thought these small mom and pop shops would be more apt to get popped than like a Microsoft or a Palo Alto or something like that. And now it doesn't matter who you are.
Yes.
Like any company is vulnerable to getting attacked, and you see every day, multiple times a day. Sometimes you'll see this company or that company got breached by whatever, and then you have big ones like NotPetya and WannaCry and Log4j, and you hear all these, and they impact multiple organizations. And I think that's probably the difference. Whereas before it was very limited, and now it's very widespread and global in the attack surface there.
At least I was going to say, based on your latest efforts in expanding teams for adversary modeling, what challenges do organizations face when scaling these practices, and how can they overcome them?
I would say the number one challenge I've seen is people really understanding the value of intelligence. I spend so much of my time talking to people about why they need intelligence programs. And even people that are my peers, still some don't believe the value of it. And I think if you can really work hard to build the right intelligence program, it will provide value not just for cyber, but across the organization. Typically, they're called cyber threat intelligence teams, but I really think they should just be threat intelligence teams, because cyber is just a component of that. We work very much with physical security teams, so that they have their intelligence, we have our intelligence, and we share. And so anytime that you are giving information to your executives that can help them make decisions, that's where intelligence is valuable. If you look at the Russia-Ukraine war effort, for example, we started briefing about that about 6 months prior to the event kicking off. And at first, our executives were like, "Why are you briefing this to us?" And we're like, "Well, this is something you're going to need to know, because you have, we're in a region, right? We're in the vicinity of Ukraine. And so that might cause us harm at some point." And so it really informed them to help them with their resiliency plans and making sure that we could conduct operations elsewhere if we needed, we could relocate our people if we needed. And so it wasn't just cyber, it was geopolitical events that our cyber team happened to be talking about. And so I think when you can pull that into the organization and deploy it across the organization, not just within your cyber teams, you're more apt to be successful, because then people really start understanding the value of intelligence.
This is the first time that someone's brought up the importance of physical security and cybersecurity, bringing them together.
We're married. We're partners.
No, it's fantastic to actually hear that, because I worked with a company that dealt with physical layer cybersecurity attacks, and as you probably are fully aware of the Hack 5 tools, messing with all those tools. And a lot of that was about getting physical layer security into the door to be able to place those tools. And we noticed when we talked to a lot of companies, they're totally separated from the physical security to the cyber, and how important that is to actually merge those together. So that's great.
When I was at GSK is when the UHC shooting happened, right? The very first call I made was not to my boss or his boss. It was to my physical security team and said, what do we need to do?
Yes.
Before I even talked to my boss.
Yeah.
That's how important that relationship is, because I knew that they were going to need support because we had to protect our executives.
Yes.
And so even though it was not a cyber event, I was getting intelligence from my cyber feeds, and I wanted to make sure that they had the information that we had. So it's so important to have that connection. I mean, during COVID was also very important. You had riots happening at facilities that we were learning about in dark web forums, and we would educate our physical teams so that they knew that there was going to be a riot at a certain place near our facilities, so they could harden defenses around our facilities and keep people out. So, I mean, there's a lot of give and take there, right? They may learn something from their contacts, so they want to share with us, and vice versa. But you have to have that relationship in your organization. I think used to in the old days, they were very separate, but there's a gray line between them now, and they cross over a lot, and we have to have that relationship.
That's fantastic.
I might have some questions as well. Looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest shifts in adversary behaviors over the next few years, particularly in sectors like healthcare? And how should professionals adapt their models?
So I think threat actors are going to continue to use AI to their advantage, for one. We've kind of talked about that briefly. Yeah. I think supply chain is hugely important, as well as our operational technology, our OT. While OT has a lot of different regulations to help keep them protected, they're not completely void of being able to be attacked, right?
And let's not forget about also IoT and IIoT for industrial.
Exactly. And so the more connected we become, the bigger our attack surface becomes. And we have to be able to protect against all of those different areas in which we weren't connected previously, but now we are. And I think the supply chain is probably what gets hit the most. And we have to make sure that we can trust that supply chain and we can keep our supply chain going. If you look at events like last year when we had the CrowdStrike incident, that impacted us in ways that we never would have thought. It was not a cyber event in any way, but we learned a lot from a cyber response. And I think, having those connected systems, if we make sure that we have protections around those systems, that's really going to help us as we move forward into the future. But the attacks are going to get more sophisticated, so the defenses need to be more sophisticated. We cannot protect tomorrow's threats with yesterday's technology. We have to continue advancing and innovating in order to defend against them.
Yeah. Great question, and good answer as well. For aspiring as cybersecurity leaders watching this, what advice would you give on developing skills in adversary modeling? Any resources like books or practices would you recommend based on your experience?
Understanding the Attacker's Mindset by Sarah Armstrong Smith is probably the #1 book that I would recommend. It's How to Think Like an Attacker.
What's the title again? I'm sorry.
Understanding the Cyber Attacker's Mindset.
I'll post that on the comments too.
Okay. So Sarah wrote this book. She works at Microsoft. And I've always wanted to write a book like this, but never been brave enough to do it. Being that I've worked in intelligence and cybersecurity for so long, I tend to think like a threat actor. And so I believe that in order to really defend and protect your organization, you have to think like the attacker. And so whether it's physical or cyber, right? Physical, you're going to think about what are your entry points? How can attacker get in? Same with your network. How can attacker take advantage? M&A is a really good example of how to use this. So if I'm going to buy a company, you have your traditional things that you check around that company and, whether you want to buy it and what value it's going to give you. But how often do they really dive deep into the threats related to those companies? And if you work with your intelligence teams, they can actually help you make better decisions about whether or not to proceed with an M&A, because they may be able to uncover things that the firms that you hire to do this can't. And so we make sure that we integrate our intelligence teams into that M&A process very early on, before day zero, so that our executives can make the best decisions. That's probably the best example I can use for understanding value of an intelligence team from a decision advantage standpoint. So I think, if leaders can make sure that they have good intelligence teams that are integrated throughout the organization and not just in their cyber teams, I think they'll find that they'll have a lot of value from those intelligence teams.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there
Fine.
we go. Yeah, he just posted the book there on there. So thank you, Ashkay, for doing that.
Thank you. Finally, if there is one key takeaway from your work on knowing your adversaries, what would it be?
To build it. Not a lot of organizations. I'm not going to say I invented it by any means, but when I talk to my peers, I don't see a lot of organizations doing this. So first and foremost, you must have an intelligence team. I firmly believe that with everything that I have in me, that you must have an intelligence team. And then that intelligence team must be integrated across your organization, not just within your cyber team. And then you have to take the effort to make sure you have the right tools and technologies to defend and protect the organization. And so I think if you can pull all these together and build this for your organization, you're going to be ahead of the game. So like I mentioned, with CrowdStrike having that very large number of threat actors, if you can build your defenses to defend and protect against the 30% that might be coming after you, you're inadvertently building defenses against the rest of them, just because actors use similar TTPs. So just do it.
Yeah, just
Nike.
get it
You like
done.
Nike, just do it.
Actually, do you think it's important to have an internal threat team instead of outsourcing outside, or does that make a difference?
I think both are important. I think you have to have your internal team because nobody's going to know your organization like you do, but you also need somebody who's monitoring you from the outside in.
Gotcha.
So your internal teams will monitor you from the inside out, and then your external teams will monitor you from the outside in, and you get that full picture of what you need to work for.
So have you seen, we see this question a lot. Have you seen because when we have Bonnie on, and Bonnie helps us co-host, she talks about, discussing with the board and does the board understand the importance of a threat intel team? Because obviously the money is going to flow down from them on approving the funding for it. So do you see them more seeing the importance of having something like an adversary model?
So I don't know that they necessarily know, specifically about the adversarial model unless you brief them on it and you educate them on it. But what you can do is you can have metrics from the adversarial model to show how you're hardening your defenses. So there are specific metrics that you can use to show how many threat actors are you tracking, and then how many of those TTPs are you monitoring for, and then how many of those TTPs do you have defenses against? And as they see those metrics increase, they know that you're hardening your defenses, and that's a metric that you report.
Yes.
And it's also very important that they are getting intelligence around different threats that are happening that are impacting your organization. You don't want to come in, from the side and say, oh, by the way, we got hit by X, when they never even knew X was out there.
Gotcha.
And it's not that you have to tell them about every one of them that's going on, because there's so many all the time. But what are those threats out there that you really care about? So if, say, for example, a CVE comes out and it's a 9.9 CVE, you don't even have it at your organization. Yeah, threat actors are going to be looking for it, but are you really a target for it? Whereas you have a 4.3 and you have it at your organization and it's causing you great concern, then you want to make sure you rise that information up. It doesn't matter what the CVE score is. If it's external facing and you have it at your organization and you're vulnerable, it doesn't matter what the rate is, in my opinion.
It really sounds to me that how important it is to really understand the threat actors that are really targeting you, to spending the time and not look at everything, because obviously that you have limited staff trying to do many things, but how to look at those specific targets and really be specific towards that.
Yep. And it also can help with burnout too, right? our analysts are constantly getting barraged with data left and right, front and center, day and night. I mean, 24 hours a day where we have information just coming at us, right? Doesn't matter if you're an Intel analyst, a SOC analyst, an incident responder, vulnerability management, it doesn't matter. We all have data coming at us all the time. So the more programs that you can put in place to ease that burden on the analyst, the better off they're going to be as a human, because you're gonna take some of that load off of them and make sure that they know you have tools to help them.
Alert fatigue.
Yes,
Alex, you know that.
Yeah, I know. MFA is one of the problems, and Microsoft has it. I think last year, if I'm not wrong, and even this year happened again, and we will see again and again. That's one of the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I remember walking into SOCs before where, at one place, and they had the board that, they SOC up, they had all their alerts spinning through, and they had, I think, 500,000 alerts pumping through there. And I asked the analyst at the time, I was like, man, how do you figure out which is the most critical alert, right? And he's like, this is just noise at this point. He goes, it's absolute noise, and we just track it, but it's very hard to even get to that point.
It's overwhelming. I mean, it's that finding that needle in the haystack. It's when you have alerts like that. I mean, it's FIFO. It's first in, first out. You can't really find those things that are important. And what happens if you miss it, right? You could have 1 million alerts, and you look at 999,999, and the one you don't look at is the one that causes you an issue. And that weight on those analysts is just, it's really bad. And you want to make sure you give them tools to help relieve some of that for them. And the more that we can make our tools to where it's giving them alerts they need to look at that's actionable, the better off they're going to be, and the better off our organization is going to be. So that's where the call out to vendors is, how do we help make that better for our analysts?
But even with the AI, if we try to, let's say, to give him some tactics or some process in order to analyze those alerts, even though he might not be so mature. You remember with Debbie Wheeler from the Delta Airlines, we talked about maturity on the AI, and AI is not yet mature. It requires
about how vendors there, everything is still a little. They're definitely obviously waiting for maturity, which makes sense to me to make sure AI is rolled out correctly. I totally understand that. But even she mentioned the products we talked about, vendors. What are you seeing with AI, and that's really making a difference? And she said it's just not. She didn't see. I guess I don't want to put words in her mouth, but the way I saw it didn't see the maturity yet. With the vendors, there's a lot of marketing terms, and they're adding on some AI capabilities to their products that they already have, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But are the changes coming as fast as we're seeing from the offensive attacks? Are we seeing the defensive, the vendors move as fast as they are? I guess that's the point they're trying to make.
Well, first thing, newsflash, AI was not born with ChatGPT. We've had AI around for years, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people don't really understand. There's a lot of new technology, yes, but we've been integrating AI into the backend systems for a long time. That's helped us. The biggest thing I think for us is going to be trusting the models. Yes. If we don't trust the models, it's not going to ease the pain or burden for us. And then we also have to make sure that we're building systems that can ease that load on the analyst. Ideally, all of our alerts will go into one place. Some tool will say, these are the things that you need to look at that cause you the most problems and the most significant. And then those analysts can go look at those alerts versus looking at lists of tens of thousands every day, day in and day out, day in and day out. And then when you can get to that point, that'll be good. What I really worry about is automation. I see a lot of organizations automate to automate. They're not thinking about the requirements behind the automation and understanding what is it that they're actually needing to automate, so that the human can then go do what the human needs to do and the machine can do what the machine needs to do. It's just, let's throw everything at it and figure out what we can automate. And you're going to end up messing up a lot of systems that way, and you're going to be missing something. So I really strongly encourage people to make sure you understand all of your requirements behind what processes you want to automate before you just go start automating.
So again, assessment. If
Another
I hear,
Yes,
Yeah.
there we go. Do your assessment first before you start automating everything and messing up everything.
because
Yeah.
you have to identify everything, and then you have to put in place those things or
Yeah,
those tools.
Yeah, I mean, get a small team of people who know your organization and have them interview, people across your teams and figure out where their hard parts are of their job, the things that they do over and over and over again that are repeatable and a machine could
Yes.
do. That they can automate those kind of things and free up the people to do the thinking, which is what the human does. Because AI is not at a place where it can anticipate what's going to happen
Yeah.
next like a human can.
Yeah.
Not
Exactly.
everywhere. I mean, don't quote me on that, but
No, for sure. I mean, I'm thinking how, let's say, when I'm working with AI, I'm not working in order to tell him I need to do my job. No, that's not the right way. I'm doing something in order to look for something. I mean, let's say I have a standard. I'm looking for something in the NIST SPA 153, something specific, not the entire document, because I'm not looking for the entire document to understand, but I'm looking for something specific. And when I'm looking for that specific, I'm asking him from where you got that information. If that information is 100% from a website or a document, which is real, not someone who just wrote a document, because could be even a kid, 16 years old, and that kid could put that info. No, I need something official, like a statement. And he's providing me that part, and then I'm asking him, could you please provide me the link of that document? And then he's providing the link, and then I'm clicking on that link in order to see if it's real from, let's say, from NIST. And when I open from the link from NIST, I'm telling, okay, that's good, but not all the people are doing that. And
no.
Most of the issues I see that people are not checking all those documents or even links or even the information.
I don't care how many alerts that you put up to say verify that information that you get from the engine, whatever you're using, whether it's GPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever. People are people. They're going to get it. They're going to read it. They're going to believe it or not, and they're not going to check the facts, right?
Yeah.
So how do we
Yeah.
make sure that the systems produce good information versus relying on the human to make sure it's good information? Humans are humans, and at the end of the day, they're going to take the shortcuts. They're going to do what's easy. They're going to they're going to make mistakes, right? And it's really, we have to build a technology to enable the human to be able to be safe.
Yeah.
It's funny how we talk about this because my daughter's in college, and the professors warned her that, if you're going to utilize AI, just make sure that there's facts, right? And he was showing examples of how they were doing research. It wasn't providing the correct facts, and how you need to understand that a lot of this is just pulling information from the web, and you yourself need to do your own research and verify those facts. And we had a conversation on our last LinkedIn about how much can you trust the information come from AI right now? Now, I know we're talking about ChatGPT and stuff, but how much can you trust that? But we'll kind of go at Ashke, come into another subject. I'm going to post this up real quick, Ashke, if you can. Can you guys see that? And we'll answer that question right there.
How can an organization build feedback loops between alert handling and adversary models so that analysts actively refine which alerts are high priority? And does this approach reduce alert fatigue sustainably?
I think if it's done right, it will. And if you use your adversarial model to inform your content that you're building, and then that informs the way that you alert on the different things that you're seeing, then if it's done right, then it should reduce the alert fatigue. But you have to make sure that the adversarial model informs the detection rules that you're building. So that's why you have to have that cross collaboration. It's not just a CTI thing. This is across the whole organization. So it's your engineering team, it's your detection team, it's your EDR, your SIM team, it's whatever team it is. You have to make sure that you're doing that collaboration across. But if you build that content right and it's based on that intelligence, and you have to continuously modify it, right? You can't just set it and forget it. That's why if you have SIM content, you should be regularly reviewing that anyway. Marry that up against the threat model, the adversary model, and make sure that you are looking at the right things for the right reasons, and then that will help you with the prioritization. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're getting, what time is it now? We're starting to get, what are we at now? We're we only got 5 minutes left. So do you want to say anything about your organization you're working with now? Any promotions? Anything you want? It's up to you.
Sure. So burnout is real. And burnout is not just stress. I mean, you can be stressed and you can go home and you can forget about it and come back the next day. You still have the stress. It's when you can't turn it off, then you realize that you have burnout. And by the time you usually recognize you're burned out, you're gone, right? Like it's already happened. So we need to make sure that we talk more about burnout. And I encourage leaders listening to talk to your teams about their mental health, and making sure that you understand you're human inside of your workers, not just that they're workers, and get to know them so that you can recognize when they're off, and make sure that we have some way of helping them to get through whatever they have going through, because people handle things differently. People come to work with a smile on their face, but deep inside they're probably depressed, or they have something going on. And it's usually the compounding of, everything you have going on work to everything that you have going on in your life. Mm-hmm. And then it could be that simple thing as somebody ran out in front of you, like as you were driving to work, and that just sets you off, right? It'd be the littlest thing, and it'll sneak up on you before you know it. But cyber burnout cannot be one of those taboo things that you don't talk about. As a leader, we have to talk about this kind of thing in our workplace. When I have my one-on-ones with my teams, I always ask them how they're doing. Not just, superficial conversation. I really want to know how they're doing. And our one-on-ones are not for them to run through their checklist of all the work they've done with, for the week. I want to know what's going on, how they're handling things, what they need to be successful. Because my job at the end of the day is to make sure my team's successful.
Of course.
You remind me to my manager, Lisa.
I love to hear this. Reminds me of some other people too, but it's fantastic that you're understanding the mental health side of it, and how important that is. When you're right, when people there's two lives, there's our work life and there's our home life, and we try to
there's no balance. There's no balance,
and there's no balance, and it's hard to separate one when something bad happens at home and you bring it to work, and vice versa. So, but it's great to see that when you talk to your employees, you're trying to understand it's important in their mental health, not just the technical aspects. That's fantastic.
And I hope by leading that way that they become leaders that do the same thing, that they lead like that as well. I want to demonstrate qualities in which they will want to take with them when they become leaders.
Yeah. Compassion and empathy. It's fantastic.
And you know what? I think it's good to have this kind of managers in every company.
I agree.
In order to understand, let's say, maybe they lost something, that person, a friend. Could be, I don't know, a human or even an animal. I mean, even when I lost my dog, I was working, I was very, very sad in that day. But yeah, that's the life. We can't do too much in regards with that. Beside of that, it's good to talk with a person who's appropriate to you, to your team, to understand your, let's say, maybe you have a problem with another colleague, and that colleague, because of him, you can't do your job properly. Or sometimes that there's a person who are trying to make your life not so good in the company, or you are trying to find a way to, for example, you want to do a course, let's say, a cybersecurity course or like a CISO certification, and you need an advice. Your manager could help with that, could tell you what is best for you, because of course that manager might let's say be leader for 5 teams, and one of the teams maybe it's not the right certificate to recommend. I mean, you can't recommend CISM and to the other one who's a pen tester an OSINT, for example, and so on. You have to provide something specific for him. So yeah, I really like this kind of manager, to be honest.
I think it's important, and it really it builds good camaraderie, and
Yeah.
it helps us all work better together. Because when you work with a team, you're more apt to get things done than if you're trying to work alone.
Of course.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Aaron and Alex, for having me on today. It's been an honor to get to come over here and talk about adversarial modeling. I really believe that it works, and I'm just really happy to have the opportunity to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
So much for joining. Alex, Lisa, again, thank you so much.
Thank
Cheers.
you, everyone. Don't forget one thing. Stay tuned, because on 23rd of June, if I'm not wrong.
September.
Sorry, September. Yeah, my mind. Sorry. We have bridging AI and AI cybersecurity innovation with AI governance. So we have a person in GRC of AI, which is really a good topic for everyone who wants to join us. Thank you again.
Thank you so
Look
much.
forward to it.
Lisa, we'll be on just, I'll stop it.